Hi, good evening everybody, and welcome to the daily Rambam Shiur, lesson 155, the rules of Hilchos Biat Hamikdash from chapter 5 until 7. The Shiur belongs to the Erev Yom Kippur, and Chazal are teaching us, S'u yedeichem kodesh uvorchu es Hashem, raise your hand and bless the name of God. Chassidus explains that this particular text teaches us the need to elevate the midos, which are the emotions, to the mailo, to the level of moichin, of the intellect, and only then, when a person will refine his moichin, he will be able uvorchu, to extend and to bring godliness into this world. And indeed, the central topic of the first chapter of the daily shiur is the idea of Kiddush Yodayim Veraglaim. Kiddush is sanctifying the hand and the feet, which the Kohanim, the priest, used to practice before their service. The act of washing and sanctifying their hands is so critical to an extent that without the Kiddush Yadayim Veraglaim, if he was serving in the temple, he will be liable to miso b'dei Shumayim, heavenly death, and also the service will be possible. However, it is not required to do it between one avodah to another avodah, one service to another. He is able to do it at the beginning of the day and continue the different and various services throughout the day, as long as he is not interrupting with Hesed Hadas, which is a distraction, or he needs to go to the washroom or leaving the temple. After the fact, by the Eved, even if he left the temple, as long as he was not distracted, it's called he wasn't experiencing Hesed Hadas, he doesn't need to sanctify again the hand, and he can rely on the previous Kiddush. A high priest, which was serving in the temple, and as we have learned yesterday on the day of Yom Kippur, where he is switching from Bigdei Zahov to Bigdei Lovon and vice versa, he needs to mekadesh Yodov v'Raglov, his hand and his feet. However, if he did not do it, after the fact, it's not critical, since the Torah stated V'kidesh Aharon ubonov, since the Torah compared Aharon ubonov, so we have learned only something that is equal by Aharon ubonov, which is the first Kiddush of the day. This is critical and it will be me'akev. However, something that is only exclusively shaykh to him, like those Kiddushim that are being done on Yom Kippur, it's not going to be me'akev, it's not going to be as vital. And for that reason, if he did not mekadesh between begodim to begodim throughout Yom Kippur, b'di'evet it will be kosher. A night, if a night passed, and though he was up a whole night, and he was not masiach das, he was not distracted, he was focused, nevertheless, he still needs to wash again for the new day. And the reason is because Yodayim nifsolin belino. Yodayim are the hands, and if it was lino, it was an entire night went over the Yodayim, he needs to be mekadesh them again. What will determine a beginning of the day is not necessarily actual dawn or sunrise, but the beginning of the avodah. For that reason, if he was sanctifying before Trumas Hadeshen, which was the first avodah in the temple, the removal of the ashes, though it was before done, it was before Alois HaShachar, and technically, seemingly, he needs to be Mekadesh after done, but nevertheless, when it comes to Kiddush Yodayim Veraglayim, what will determine the day is the first avodo of the day, in order to make him exempt for any future Kiddushim throughout the day. The kiyur itself, the facet and the vessel where the water itself were, since it was very important for the water not to be disqualified belino, so they were, for that reason, being deeply hidden in the spring, or they were in a muchni, as the Rambam said, in a different type of container which was not holy, in order to not to be disqualified with the lino, with staying there overnight. The minimum of water which were in the kiyur, in the facet, it was in order to be mekadesh from that water a minimum of 4 kohanim. Since the Torah stated that the kiyur was made for Aharon Uvonov, which were already the sons of Aaron, were 2. In addition, it was his grandson as well, Pinchas, which he later joined them. For that reason, you know, it was a minimum amount that was sufficient for 4 kohanim. The way the kiddush is being done is placing his right hand over his leg hand and putting the water on top of them. And the same thing it's being done on the left side as well. This kiddush sanctification was done while he was standing, because it is considered to be a sheirus, and sheirus is a service, and there is no way a service should be done only me'umod, only standing. The washing must be done in the right hand. If it was done in the left hand, it's disqualified. While he's doing it, his feet must be standing on the floor. If, however, he shares his feet in such a way that one of them is standing on a kli, on a different vessel, so we have to assess what will happen if this vessel, which is under his other leg, will be taken away from him. Will he be able to stand on a stable way on the remaining feet, which is on the ritzpo? If it will, so his avodo will be kosher. Also, the stone itself must be stable, but the avodo will be kosher, since it is, after all, attached to the ground. The second chapter of the lesson deals with the need of the kohanim to be in a state of tmimus, without any blemish, without any defect. However, there is 3 levels of defects with practical implication. There are type of mumin, defects that will disqualify an animal from becoming a korban and a priest from serving. If he actually suffers from those type of defects and he went ahead and he was serving, his service will be posul, and he will get malchus when he has done it b'mezid. If we're talking over here those type of defects that exclusively they are only those type of defects that disqualifying a human, he gets lashes. However, his service is not going to be posul. Then there is a third type of defects, the most minor type, that in principle, biblically, there is no problem in those type of defects. However, they were forbidden rabbinically as a result of maris ho'ain, that they don't appear right. Though that to begin with, ideally, he should not be servicing in the temple while he is experiencing them, but after the fact, his avodah will be kosher and he's not going to get malchus over them. Those type of mumin which are not visible, though such a mum in a behemo will be pasul, nevertheless, when a kohen, a priest, has those blemishes, they're not disqualifying him to work. And the reason is since the Torah specified outright shever regel or shever yod. The Torah exemplify what type of blemish considered a disqualifying blemish, and the Torah said a broken leg or a broken hand. The reason why the Torah actually brought a example in order to teach us to compare all other types of blemishes to this one. Same way as a broken leg or a broken hand is something that is visible, this as well will be visible. Another disqualification which will disqualify a kohen from working, if he is a oral, he is not circumcised. If he went ahead and worked, he gets malchus, and obviously the avodah will be pasul. If a disqualification comes as a result that he marries ladies he should not marry, for example, grusho, chalutzo, or other types of ladies he is not allowed to marry, so he needs to take an oath, a commitment to stop from his action. At the moment that he took upon himself and declared publicly, he will be okay to work, although he didn't have a chance to divorce those ladies. A cholol. Cholol is someone who was born from a marriage of a kohen to someone who he should not marry, so the child is a cholol, and for that reason, though biologically he is a kohen, he is forbidden to work. Nevertheless, if he went ahead and worked, the offering that he actually brought will be okay, as we actually reading in this weekly portion of the Torah when Moses benches the tribes and he gives the broche to the tribe of Levi. He says, Borech Hashem Cheloi, God bless. Cheloi means his army. Nevertheless, the word Cheloi can be interpreted as Chalolim Sheboi. So even B'di'eved, a Cholol brought a korban, it will be accepted. Towards the end of the chapter, the Rambam brings the process of the High Court in Lishkas Hagozis, which they used to qualify and define who are kosher towards serving as priest and those one who are not, or because of a mum or because of a lineage. If they determine that someone is not qualified to serve, they used to cover themselves with black clothes, I guess as an act of mourning or sadness, and they left the azor. If they were disqualified only because of a physical blemish, they were referring them to work in Lishkas Ho'etzim. It's a department that were inspecting the quality of the woods which used to be brought for the Mizbeiach. If they were actually carrying any worms, they were obviously disqualified. If they were clean, they were forwarded towards the service on the Mizbeiach. So those Kohanim who were found to be unqualified due to a physical blemish, they were actually serving in Lishkas Ho'etzim. In the final chapter, the Rambam himself displays all type of mumin, of defects, according to the order of the organs. Any type of a damage in the system of hearing. Some of the damages is around the eye, some of them in the lashes, some of them in the systems of vision. In the nostril, whether it is a cut or damage in the nose can disqualify him. There is some of the damages, including the mouth, whether a damage or a split in the lips. In the reproductive system, he counts 12 different damages that will disqualify him. In the legs, there are 6. And towards the end, he brings situation of choile, if he is just sick, ill, old, or dirty. While a person who is sick or old, they don't really have a solution. So a person who is dirty, he can have a solution to wash and to prepare himself properly and to continue to serve. Very interesting fact that the Rambam mentions 2 types of mumin that may represent what we called moisar ha'odam min ha'beheimo. There is a advantage of a human in compared to an animal. For example, an animal that was born through a cesarean will be disqualified for a korban, while a human who was born in a cesarean, he can be serving as a kohen. Another situation, if a treifo is a disease in the internal organ, such a disease that a person won't be able to make it for the next 12 months. While a behemoth will be defined if she is suffering from such a disease, a streifo, and won't be able to, not only not to be eaten if it's chulin, but obviously not to be brought as a korban. So a kohen, a human being that he is treifo, is still kosher to serve as a priest in the temple. The next lesson is lesson 156, is Hilchois Bias Mikdosh, the chapter Ches and Tes, and Hilchois Issurei Mizbeiach, chapter 1. A small little comment. This lesson of 156 we have learned yesterday in the holiest day of the year, the day of Yom Kippur, that is so much associated. The most commonly read text over Yom Kippur, frequently read, is the text of the Al-Chet, and exactly the numbers and the letters of the chapters of today happens to be the same chapters that consisting those letters, Ches, Tes, and Aleph. They are the spelling of the letter of the word Chet. And we are reading the chapter Ches and Tes of Hilchois Bias Mikdosh, as well as Aleph, Perek Aleph of Hilchois Issurei Mizbeiach. Not only the letter happens to match the most frequently recited text, but also the contents of those halachos, reflecting the Torah portion that we have read yesterday. Many of the rules of Issurei Mikdosh being derived from the holy text in Parshas Achrei Mois, where God Almighty, after the death of the children of Aaron, Nodov Avihu, he gave him the warnings that are associated, those restrictions that must be incorporated while a person enters to the temple, which is basically Hilchos Bios Mikdash, and as well some of the rules in Issurei Mizbeiach happens to be also derived from this text. The amount of mumin that exclusively are disqualifying a man to become a Kohen happens to be also the amount of 90, which coincide with the gematria of tzaddik, a person who is the letter tzaddik, 90. I guess same way as a person becomes a tzaddik when he is eliminating spiritual blemishes. A Kohen is able to serve when he is eliminating these physical blemishes. And again, those physical blemishes, some of them are in the head, some of them in the eyes, in the nose, in the lips, in the stomach, in the back, in the fingers, in the... Not only outright blemishes will disqualify him, but even if there is a disproportion within the avorim, for example, he brings even when his size of the avorim of the organs of himself, even the fingers, are too excessively large or excessively small, and he gives a rule of thumb to measure what will be a size which will be considered the proper size of the nose. And he gives an example, it should match precisely the size of the pinky, and if it's more or less, he is disqualified as a Kohen. A Kohen who is also a eater, he is a lefty, he won't be able to serve as well as a Kohen. Though that the total mumin that will be disqualifying the Kohen are 140, 90 of them, as we mentioned, they are exclusively to a man only. And that's basically, on a nutshell, the first chapter. In the second chapter, the Rambam deals with the psul, with the disqualification of a zal. Zal means a foreigner, someone who is not a Kohen, that he will be subject to heavenly death, and goes without saying that his service will be possible. However, he will be subject to heavenly death only if he was engaging in that type of avoido, which is called avoidotamo. Avoidotamo is a type of a service that is finalizing the process. He gives, for example, what type of service will be considered avoidotamo. Zriko, haktoro, nisuch of the wine and the nisuch of the water. And I'm going to explain. Zriko is sprinkling the blood, bringing the avorim to burn on top of the Mizbeiach, to pour the water or the wine. And the reason why they called a proper avoido, because after this type of avoidos that we have just mentioned, there is no other avoido. If there is type of avoido, for example, he gives when he pours the oil into the dough, when he's mixing the dough, when he is collecting the blood into a container. Each and every one of the avoidos that we have just mentioned, since they are not the final stage in the process, though he will get lashes, but he will be exempt from heavenly death. It's important to note that there are certain avodos, services in the temple that foreigners are permitted to do. For example, to slaughter the animals of the Kodoshim, a foreigner will be permitted to do, since the Torah said outright, "Veshochat es ben habokol vehikrivu bnei Aaron hakohanim." So Chachomim, our sages, are deriving from this text, mihakrovo voilach, from after the shchito, then it goes over to bnei Aaron hakohanim. Same way, when it comes to lighting the candles, it is also kosher in Zorim. So it will be kosher to begin with. Another type of avodo that a foreigner is not going to be subject to death is when a foreigner removes the ashes from the Mizbeiach. And the reason, because it is written avodas matono, type of an avodo that has to do with giving, with contributing. But when it comes to Tulmas Hadeshen, there is no contribution involved over there. It's only siluk, a removal. So for that reason, he is not going to be chayav. Also, a kohen who is tomei or missing any garments, and he will be subject to a punishment of heavenly death, will be relevant only to those type of avodos, of type of services that a foreigner will be liable for them. Towards the end of the chapter, the Rambam summarizes once and for all the disqualification for the service in the temple. And here it is. Someone, a Kohen, who served ever Avodah Zorah, he cannot serve any longer. A foreigner, somebody who is not a Kohen who is a Baal Mum, as we said, that he is having a physical blemish or a defect. Tomei, he is ritually impure, or even if he was already went to the mikveh, but nevertheless, he is still at Vulyoim because the sunset has not arrived yet, and therefore he cannot serve yet. Further than this, if he is already, he served, the sunset has arrived, but since he was mechuyev, he was liable to bring a korban, and he was not bringing it, he will be considered a mechusar kippurim. A kohen who is a oinen, he lost a father or parents or any other type of direct relative that was not buried yet. If he's drunk, if he's missing garments, if he has too many garments, if his garments are torn, if he has excessive hair, if he did not wash his hand and legs, if a kohen acts the avodah while he is sitting, if there is a separation between him and the utensils he is serving with, if there is a separating object between him and the floor, if he worked on the left hand, all of the ones that we have mentioned, not only that they are not allowed, but in case they have served, they have desecrated their avodah, and the korban is pasul. There is only 3 exemptions that the avodah will be kosher, though they have violated the violation. If it was a purua roish, a kohen who had a long hair, if the garments were torn, or if he slaughtered to avodah zorah b'shoigeg, if they have worked, the avodah will be kosher. In the final chapter of the Yom Kippur lesson, we are dealing with those type of Issurei Mizbeiach that they must be tmimim. Tmimim is blemishless, without any defects. Not only the actual slaughtering is forbidden, but also to dedicate some animal that is a Baal Mum is also forbidden. Sometimes, though a person have actually dedicated, But if his intention was not really matching his verbalization, so he won't be liable. Example, if, for example, a person had in mind to dedicate an animal for the sake of Korban Oilo, a defected animal, and he said instead Shlomim, or the opposite, he had in mind to dedicate Shlomim and he said Oilo. So he not gonna be liable since the actual Kedusha was not really triggering, since the Piv v'liboy, his mouth and his heart, were not really shoving, they were not reflecting each other. It does make a difference whether the mum is a permanent or it is a temporary. It is forbidden to be makdish, to dedicate. It is forbidden to be makriv, to bring it as an offering. Even if a non-Jew brings an offering, it is also forbidden to bring a defective animal. Even an animal that is already to kodshim, a person is forbidden to cause any type of act which will inflict a damage in him, a mum. A person who went ahead and he was dedicating an animal that is a Baal mum, the animal must be redeemed. The difference between a Baal mum kovua, which means a permanent mum, to a temporary mum, is regarding the triggering, the halois of the kedusha towards the fetus. For example, if we're talking over here a Baal mum oivel, a temporary type of a damage, and it was not redeemed yet. At the meantime, it gave birth to a new animal, and the new animal will be 100% kosher to bring it as an offering. However, by a Baalas mum kovua, if an animal has a permanent damage and a child, a new animal was born, then no matter what, the new animal must be redeemed for the following principle: shelo yetofel chomor mino ikor. There is no way that something that is a offshoot from a primary product that is forbidden, he cannot have more holiness than the original cause that brought life, that brought him the life. Thank you very much, and Shana Tova to everybody.